Ross's thesis. Working from the same archaeological discoveries, artifacts, and recovered records as archaeologists and linguists have for 200 years, Sitchin propounds, proves, in the opinion of this author, that the Anunnaki, the Sumerians, quote, those who came down from the heavens, and quote, Old Testament Hebrew, Anakim, Nephilim, Elohim, Egyptian Neter, an advanced civilization from the 10th planet in our solar system, splashed down in the Persian Gulf area around 432,000 years ago, colonized the planet with the purpose of obtaining large quantities of gold, he says. Some 250,000 years ago, the recovered documents tell us their lower echelon miners rebelled against the conditions in the mines, and the Anunnaki Directorate decided to create a new creature to take their place. Enki, the chief scientist, and Ninhursag, their chief medical officer, after getting no satisfactory results, splicing animals and Homo erectus genes, merged their Anunnaki genes and that of Homo erectus and produced us, Homo sapiens, genetically bicameral species, for their purposes as slaves, they said. And the demand for us as workers, Homo sapiens that is, became greater, and we were genetically manipulated to reproduce, and eventually became so numerous that some of us were expelled from the Anunnaki city centers, gradually spreading over the planet, and having become a stable genetic stock and developing more precociously than perhaps the Anunnaki anticipated, the Anunnaki began to be attracted to humans as sexual partners, and children were born of these unions. This is how the Sumerian legend goes. This was unacceptable to the majority of the Anunnaki High Council, and it was decided to wipe out the human population through a flood that was predictable when Nibiru, the 10th in our solar system, and the Anunnaki home planet came through the inner solar system again around 12,500 years ago in one of its periodic 3,600-year returns. Some humans were saved by the action of the Anunnaki official, Enki, who was sympathetic to the humans he had originally genetically created. For thousands of years, we were their slaves, their workers, their servants, their soldiers in their political battles among themselves. The Anunnaki used us as the construction for their palaces, and we retroproject the religious notion of the temple on these now, their cities, their mining and refining complexes, and their astronomical installations on all the continents. They expanded from Mesopotamia to Egypt to India to South and Central America, basically all over the world, and the stamp of their presence can be found in the farthest reaches of the planet. Around 6,000 years ago, they probably realized that they were going to phase off the planet, began gradually to bring humans to independence. Sumer, the human civilization, amazing in its sudden nature and highly advanced character, was set up under the tutelage in Mesopotamia. Human kings were inaugurated as go-betweens, foremen of the human population answering to the Anunnaki, a strain of humans genetically enhanced with more Anunnaki genes, a bloodline of rulers and tradition of servants of the people was initiated, according to Gardner. These designated humans were taught technology, mathematics, astronomy, advanced crafts, and the ways of advanced civilized society in schools called now mystery schools, but there was no mystery about them. Gardner has brought to light the fact that there exists a robust, highly documented genetic history carrying all the way back to the Anunnaki, possessed by the heterodox tradition of Christianity, which is only now coming forward, no longer shy of the Inquisition. This tradition, preserving the bloodlines, is one branded heretical and persecuted by the Roman Church. There were no dark ages for this tradition, only for those whom the Church wanted to keep in the dark about the real nature of human history and destroy the bloodline, a direct threat to the power of the bishops. What evidence supports the Sitchin thesis of Zecharia Sitchin's hypothesis? The astronomical evidence? Quote, no concrete problem is going to be solved as long as the experts of astronomy are too supercilious to touch mythical ideas, which are firmly believed to be plain nonsense. Of course, as long as historians of religion swear to it that stars and planets were smuggled into originally healthy, fertility cults and naive fairy tales only very late, whence these unhealthy subjects should be neglected by principle, and as long as the philologists imagine that familiarity with grammar replaces that scientific knowledge which they lack and dislike. Hamlet's Mill. A key underpinning of the Sitchin paradigm is the existence now or in the past of the 10th planet in our solar system, the home planet of the Anunnaki, with the size, orbit, and characteristics described as Sitchin has demonstrated in the Enuma Elish and corroborated by Harrington, former chief of the U.S. Navy Observatory, now deceased. Tombaugh discovered Pluto in 1930. Christie of the U.S. Navy Observatory discovered Charon, Pluto's moon, in 1978. So basically, both these discoveries are very recent. The characteristics of Pluto, derivable from the nature of Charon, demonstrated that there must still be a large planet undiscovered, because Pluto could not be the cause of the residuals, the wobbles, in the orbit paths of Uranus and Neptune clearly identifiable. The IRIS, the infrared astronomical satellite, during 1983 and 84, produced observations of the 10th planet so robust that one of the astronomers on the project said that, quote, all that remains is to name it, end quote, from which point the information has become curiously guarded. In 1992, Harrington and Van Flandern of the Naval Observatory, working with all the information they had at hand, published their findings and opinions that there is indeed a 10th planet, even calling it an intruder planet. The 10th planet being an intruder planet. The search was narrowed to the southern skies. Below the ecliptic, Harrington invited Sitchin, having read his book and translations of the Enuma Elish, to a meeting at his office, and they correlated the current findings with the ancient record. The recovered Enuma Elish document, a history of the formation of our solar system and more, says that at the time when Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Uranus, and Saturn were in place, there was a Uranus-sized planet called Tiamat in orbit between Mars and Jupiter. Earth was not in place yet. A large wandering planet called Nibiru was captured into the system gravitationally. As it passed by the outer planets, it caused the anomalies of their moons, the tilting of Uranus on its side, the dislodging of Pluto from its being a moon of Saturn to its own planetary orbit. Its path bent by the gravitational pull of the large planets. First, its satellites collided with the large planet Tiamat, and on the second orbit through, Nibiru collided with Tiamat, driving the larger part of it into what is now Earth's orbit to recongeal as Earth, dragging its moon with it to become our moon with all its anomalies. The shattered debris of Tiamat's smaller part became the asteroid belt, comets and meteorites. The gauge of our Pacific Basin is somewhat testimony to the collisional event. Nibiru settled into a 3,600-year elliptical retrograde, that's a position direction to all the other planets, orbit around our sun, coming in through the asteroid belt region between Mars and Jupiter at perigee and swinging far out as Pluto at apogee. Harrington acknowledged that his information agreed with all these details, and the maps they each had drawn of the orbits were almost indistinguishable. The current probable location of Nibiru, Planet X, our 10th planet, estimated by both was the same. It's the opinion of the author here, and others, that in light of the evidence already obtained through the use of Pioneer 1011 and two Voyager spacecraft, the infrared imaging satellite IRIS 84 and 83 and 84, and the clear and the unequivocal statements of Harrington when consulting with Sitchin that the search has already been accomplished, in fact, that the planet has already been found. We need to focus and force the issue of the 10th planet being in our solar system, not just to demonstrate the validity of the new paradigm, but for the very practical reason. The ancient records are very clear. The passage of the 10th planet Nibiru, once every 3,600 years, through the inner solar system, affects the Earth, sometimes in catastrophic ways. It's very probable the cause of pole shifts, pole reversals, changes in the precessional movement, perhaps even catastrophic bombardment by asteroid-sized space debris that it may drag along with it. Since it passes through the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, and its orbit path may vary depending on the position of other planets when it comes through, it may have been responsible for the devastation of Mars. A rigorous, detailed computer modeling of the solar system, including the 10th planet, needs to be done urgently for our own planetary safety. Remember that the Vatican maintains an astronomical observatory, and Monsignor Balducci may have access to information that prompts him to make the amazing statements he has, no doubt as voice of the Vatican. The technological evidence. OOPArts is the term used to describe the purportedly out-of-place in time artifacts, such as toys, tools, technical devices, depictions, and documents which have come to light through archaeological excavation or discovery. OOPArts, O-O-P-A-R-T-S. Almost everyone is familiar, through published works or documentaries, that the clay pot battery still containing the electrodes from the Iraqi desert dates at 2,500 BC. That's 4,500 years ago. The flyable model airplane from a pyramid tomb, the sophisticated machining of stone requiring the most advanced techniques we know today, the 1,000-ton precision-cut blocks of stone in a temple foundation that we could not even handle, an ancient relief frieze from the Abydos temple depicting the rockets, spacecraft, jet engines, helicopters, even submarines. Those are of the Seti's temple in Abydos, airplanes and even the helicopters, etc. The most recent and quite amazing OOPArt is the rediscovery of monatomic gold by David Hudson. Monatomics are superconductors at room temperature, have anti-gravitic properties, and are now only being investigated by the advanced physics community. Hudson's discovery correlated with the bringing to light by Gardner of the suppressed discovery of the Anunnaki gold processing plant on Mount Horeb in the Sinai Peninsula, Mount Horeb, by Sir Flinders Petrie in 1889, demonstrates that the monatomics were already known at least 3,000 years ago. These OOPArts, coupled with evidence from many disciplines and the historical records, indicate that an advanced civilization existed in those times, possessing high technology, and that civilization was indeed the Anunnaki. The documentary evidence. The recorded historical documentation for the existence and deeds of the Anunnaki has become gradually available to us only since the early 1800s. The excavation of the ancient sites of Mesopotamia brought to light the amazingly advanced civilization of Sumer, and with it thousands of clay tablets containing not only mundane records of commerce, marriages, military actions, and advanced astronomical calculation systems, but of the history of the Anunnaki themselves. It's clear from those records that the Sumerians knew these aliens to be real flesh and blood. The library of the ruler Ashurbanipal at Nineveh was discovered to have burnt down, and the clay tablets held there were fired, preserving them for our reading. One of the most impressive finds in very recent times has been a sealed 9-foot by 6-foot room in Sipar holding, neatly arranged on shelves, a set of some 400 elaborate clay tablets containing an unbroken record of the history of those ancient times, a sort of time capsule. The evidence is so overwhelming and robust that if it weren't for those with power enough to suppress, it would have been accepted and our worldview changed a century ago, perhaps even sooner. The genetic evidence. The recovered records place the location of the Anunnaki laboratory, where the first humans were literally produced, in East Central Africa, just above their gold mines. This falls precisely on the map where the mitochondrial DNA, quote, search for Eve, end quote, places the first woman Homo sapiens and in the same period. And in parentheses, the gold mining engineers of Africa have found 100,000-year-old gold mines in that area. Now, the evidence for and description of advanced genetic engineering is all there in the ancient documents. Our rapid progress from the inception to going to Mars soon, after only 250,000 years, does not correspond to the million